Everybody, my name is Dan Kornhauser.
My name is Bobby Hunt.
Thank you guys for tuning in for another edition of Shoot the J. Shoot it! Thank you guys for joining us. Bob and I, we're going to go over a whole bunch of stuff NBA related, but before we start, I want to let you know that The Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sports book that is right for you. So head on over to betting.net. So, Bob, we haven't been on in a couple of weeks for a number of reasons, but we're here now, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's jump right into it. I personally don't give a damn about All-Star Weekend. It was a joke. NBA is just awful. The dunk contest was awful. Center won the three-point shooting contest. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Do you have anything you want to say about the All-Star Weekend?
I'm glad Obi Toppin won the dunk contest. It was a terrible one. He was the only one who had good dunks, but that's all I really have to add.
All right, let's toss that shit in the garbage. So, enough with that. Let's move on to the trade deadline. We didn't have a chance to talk about it. A lot of big deals went down. One huge league, like shake the whole league kind of a deal went down, but we'll get to that at the end. Some of the big deals at or on the deadline was the Blazers trading. One of them was the Blazers trading Norman Powell to the Clippers. Solid piece there. The Cavs getting Karis LeVert from the Pacers for draft picks and Ricky Rubio, so pretty much a bacon, egg, and cheese. The Trail Blazers, again, selling off. They traded CJ McCollum to the Pelicans for a few players and a few picks. Nothing crazy there. Sabonis got traded to the Sacramento Kings, Domantas Sabonis, from the Pacers for Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. It was kind of a weird deal. So we'll start there with the trade deadline, Bob. The Kings getting Sabonis from the Pacers. Not one that anyone really expected, particularly because of who was traded for Sabonis and Tyrese Halliburton.
People really didn't expect Halliburton to be on the move. Everyone thought that it was going to be Darren Fox, the other point guard there. But that didn't happen. Darren Fox, I believe, already is making a ton of money. So he could have been involved in that deal. Sabonis is making at least 18 to 20 mil in that range. But Halliburton's the one that goes to Pacers. It obviously makes sense why they'd value him a little more in that deal. He's a few years younger. He's more of a pass-first type point guard. There's a debate that I heard recently on NBA radio between the hosts on one of the main shows that they have. One guy really likes Tyrese Halliburton more. The other thinks Darren Fox is the better player. I'm definitely more in the Halliburton camp because I like he's a little younger, more of a pass-first guy, not getting paid big bucks quite yet. De'Aaron Fox, great scorer. I think he is a good player, but I lean more toward Halliburton, and definitely I will say that age is a huge factor there. It's not a big difference. Fox is still only, 24, 25, but when you're talking in the NBA, and especially considering that we know the Pacers are looking to rebuild, I think they hit a home run with this deal. I love them getting Tyrese Halliburton, moving down from Sabonis, who's a great player, a double-double machine, I think a two-time All-Star, but he wasn't impacting wins and losses in Indiana. And for the Kings, I kind of get it. You had a glut of guards, but I would much rather shipped out De'Aaron Fox. I think the clear winner here, at least in the interim, is the Pacers. Still, every deal, it takes a few years to really truly evaluate. You just never know what's going to happen, whether guys are going to get hurt, of course, that's the main thing, but just how they mesh with the other players in the front office, the coaching staff, what kind of contract they get, all that good stuff. But in the here and now, I love it for the Pacers. They did a great thing. And for the Kings, I don't love it, but they had a lot of guards. They traded one that I wouldn't have, but you get a premier all-star big man that is a huge upgrade over Marvin Bagley, who they shipped out in a separate deal to the Detroit Pistons. So maybe they figure, all right, bring in Sabonis an all-star and have him with Fox and Davion Mitchell and those guys, and maybe things will change in the future. But either way, neither team's a playoff team.
No, this is one of those trades that didn't really move the needle. And I'm going to agree with you and say that the Pacers actually got a pretty good end of this deal. They didn't get any draft picks, but it doesn't really matter because, as you said, as much as I love Sabonis, and you know how much I love Sabonis, that's my boy. I'm pretty sure I've had Sabonis on my fantasy team the last, 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, Sabonis is my boy. But Halliburton's been on fire, dude. I mean, he's out here averaging over 17 points per game, almost 10 assists the last month, hitting a couple of threes, 2.5 threes a game. And he really turned it up, averaging over 2 steals. And he's turned it up when Fox wasn't playing. And now in Indiana, he gets the rock full-time at point guard. He's got no one to eat up any of his playing time. Him and Chris Duarte are the future at guard potentially for the Indiana Pacers, which is great. They still have Miles Turner. We'll see if they keep him or they move him in the offseason, but he's still on the squad. They're moving forward with Goga Batadze at center, big 7-footer that they drafted a couple of years ago. So I agree with you. I'm going to go and give the Pacers the win on that trade. But let's move on from this deal, which it was close to my heart because the two main guys that got traded are both on my fantasy team. But let's move on and let's go to a deal that actually might matter in the grand scheme of things, because there was a lot of smaller deals all across the league, and there were a lot of good ones. But one of the ones that really stood out to me, besides the big one, which we'll get to in a bit, was the Derek White trade to the Celtics. I love Derek White. Now, it's a coincidence. I also have him on my fantasy team. But Derek White is a guard who, at the beginning of the season, started really slow and wasn't quite playing to the standard that he had set last season. And it was ugly, but I held firm, I hodled, and it paid off because Derek White turned it on. He's been playing a lot better recently. And when he got traded to the Celtics, there was talk that maybe his role that he played in San Antonio would fall off a bit. He wouldn't get that much playing time. Well, it's been quite the opposite. Since Derek White's been there, he's actually got very relevant playing time. He has been putting up numbers, and there's been no change really at all for him in his role with going from San Antonio to Boston. And he's a really good player. He fits exactly what Boston likes. He can play the 1, he can play the 2, he can play defense, he could shoot, and you don't need to give him the ball. So he won't cut into Tatum, he won't cut into Brown, he's the 4th, 5th, or 6th option on that team, which is perfect for a guy like him. And I like it. Adds depth to Boston, makes him a little more respectable.
Yeah, to me, it's a little befuddling that people would question how he's going to fit with Boston because they're not very deep. They have played a lot better over the past couple months. They're clearly in the thick of things of the playoff race right now. They're, I believe, the 5 or 6 seed currently as it stands, and they need some punch off the bench. Now, okay, 6 seed, perfect. So they're the 6 seed right now. They're in pretty good shape. Definitely going to be a playoff team. I don't worry about that at all. And yeah, he's getting a few more minutes because Marcus Smart and Robert Williams are currently dealing with injuries. But regardless, he's still a player that's going to be a premier scorer off the bench. He's going to get plenty of playing time. They need him, clearly. They didn't have that type of scorer really coming off the bench. So, yeah, right now he's starting. He probably won't long-term. They'll probably slide Marcus Smart back in, or definitely Robert Williams once they're fully healthy. But I think it's definitely a good deal for them. They needed that extra scoring punch, and he's going to get 30 minutes a game. I have no doubt about that.
Now, Bob, besides the big trade, which we'll get to in a hot second, and I keep alluding to it, but I don't want to give it away. I have one question for you, but before that, I want to remind you guys that betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. Find the best place to bet for you. Head on over to betting.net. Bob, of all these trades at the trade deadline, aside from the ones that we discussed, are there any other deals that got your attention?
Well, the one that got the most attention from me because it came out of nowhere was Kristaps Porzingis getting traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie. That trade is pretty fugly, I think, on both sides. To be honest, one of those where I'm going to be like, oh, that's great for either team. I get why both teams did it. I think both have regrets over the deals that they gave all 3 of those guys, because the Wizards decided to spend, I forget the exact dollar amounts, but it's 50, I think it was like 3 years, 54 million or something like that for Spencer Dinwiddie. Dan's going to be typing up the hoops hype and the salaries right now. It's usually me when he's talking. And then Davis Bertans got a really big deal. I think they tied up like 80 or 90 million in those 2 guys over the offseason. So they definitely have regrets. I get where Kristaps Porzingis is the best player in that deal. But again, it's not going to be a huge difference making for the Wizards. To me, it feels like the Wizards are just like, all right, we know these guys have no star potential. and we're going to swing for the fences, hope for the best with Kristaps Porzingis. But as we've come to know, any NBA fan that knows anything about the sport, KP will get hurt, miss pretty much at least 20 games every season. He's already missed a ton of games this year. You just can't rely on him. Being that he's over 7 foot, 7'1", those guys always have tons of injuries. Knee, back, ankle, foot. They constantly deal with these types of injuries, and Kristaps Porzingis at 7'3" has been no different. I think they just hope that maybe he's the kind of star that perhaps Bradley Beal will want to stick around with. He's still under contract for many years. We'll see if Beal gets traded in the offseason. He's one guy that didn't move, but also the fact that he got hurt and is out for the rest of the season hurt his trade value. On the flip side, for the Mavericks, they're like, all right, it wasn't working out. They're still a playoff team. They're still like the 5 seed, but I think him and Luka Doncic butted heads. I think Luka probably also hated that he wasn't available as much as he would like. And so you get 2 guys who can shoot a little, can do. In the case of Bertans, he's mainly the shooter that you can put on the wing, kind of a stretch 4 that can get 20 minutes a game. Then Spencer Dinwiddie, you just hope can be like a 6-man that can add a little scoring punch, relieve Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson of the playmaking duties and setting up the offense. But I think for both teams, it really doesn't make either of them much better. And it's just bad contracts for bad contracts.
So, Spencer Dinwiddie signed a 3-year, $54 million contract with the Nets before he got traded, sign and trade to Washington. So he's slated to make between 17 and 18 mil a year, but the final year of that contract, only 10 mil is guaranteed. So maybe they can get out of that contract by then. But yeah, it is absolutely horrid. And then on the flip side, for Davis Bertans, that was another just god-awful contract. I don't know what they were doing, but they gave that man a 5-year, $80 million deal in November of 2020. And it included an early termination option, and the man's getting 15, 16, 17 mil a year. It's gross.
That 80 mil number stuck in my head, but I thought it was combined. That's even worse. The fact that, I mean, I get it because that adds up to what Porzingis is getting. He got like a 5-year, 180 mil contract or whatever when he signed his. So again, just bad contract for bad contracts, and they're just hoping for the best with a little change of scenery and mixing it up with their lineups.
It's disgusting. I totally forgot that he got that deal, and I'm grossed out. And I'm not even a Washington fan. It's just disgusting. But Kristaps Porzingis can suck it.
Nice. I don't hold ill will toward KP, but I was happy when that deal was done. People like to say, "Oh, Knicks didn't get enough," but I was like, "Dude, he's always hurt," and I'm not giving him that a huge contract. So they took what they could get. Knicks still stink, but I think ultimately, no Knicks fan is really missing KP, and anyone who thought it was a great get for the Mavs is realizing the error of their ways.
Sucks, but with that in mind, Kristaps bundleness aside, let's talk about the big trade. Let's finally get to it. It's time. The 76ers and the Nets finally came to agreement on a deal. Harden for Simmons. Basically, 76ers get James Harden, Paul Millsap. The Nets get Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a 2022 first-round pick, and a 2027 first-round pick. So the Nets ended up getting quite the nice haul on this one. And they also are getting Goran Dragic, who got traded before the deadline, and he got bought out. So after the buyout, he's going to Brooklyn. Thanks, Spurs. Well done. How do you feel about this trade, Bob? Because I love it for the Nets. I think it's great.
Yeah, when we were talking about this with Greg leading up to the deadline, we were all saying it's obvious. It's got to happen because there's really no better player that the Sixers can get, especially because, and we talked about it ad nauseum over the last few months when we've been doing the podcast. Ben Simmons was dug in the ground. I said, and I would kick out ideas of different deals like Westbrook and guys like that because I'm like, all right, yeah, that's not a good player. He's not playing well, but it's probably the best you're going to get if a guy's dug in and literally is not coming back. I don't care that he's been a multiple-time All-Star and what have you. He's getting paid $30+ million a year because he's on that max contract, and he's dug in on his stance, and the Sixers were also pretty dug in too. They were like, "Oh, we're not settling for anything." So it was clearly the best they could get in a guy like James Harden, who is pretty much a perennial All-Star, having a down year, and I'll get to him, of course. But to me, the Sixers were in a position like this is absolutely the best offer we're going to get. We're not going to get the boatloads of first-round picks that we're hoping for. We're not going to get some young superstar in exchange for him, and he's not going to play for us, so we can't showcase him or anything. He's got to just be traded. On the other side, over the last month or so, you heard Harden was discontent. He was, I guess, pissed off about how everything's going on with Kyrie Irving, that he's only really a part-time player. I think he also doesn't like the fact that he isn't the man there and he can't do whatever the hell he wants like he could with Daryl Morey in Houston. So a perfect match made in heaven for James Harden, because now he reunites with Daryl Morey with this trade, since he's the basketball, I think, president and GM for the Sixers. I forget his exact title, but basically he's the man calling the shots with the Sixers. So it had to be done, but I totally agree with you. I know it's kind of boring when we agree on a lot of things, but it's true. I mean, the Nets get a younger player who fits better with what they want to do right now. Now, yeah, I'd like their chances of winning a title maybe a little more if Harden's Harden, but he's shown this year that he's declined some. He's not the same player. He's also dealt with some injuries over the past few years, mainly to his hamstring. So he's not always the most well-conditioned player. And so they get a younger player who all he needs to do really is play defense, rebound, and distribute the ball. You have Durant to shoot. You have Kyrie Irving to shoot. You get Seth Curry back in the deal, so he can be that third option shooting. We don't think little Dicky, a.k.a. Joe Harris, is going to come back anytime soon. He keeps having setbacks with his foot or ankle injury. So they have the scores that they need. What they need is some kind of defensive player and a guy who can maybe take some of the pressure off, the other guys, basically. So I love it for the Nets. And I think, this puts them right back into title contention. Stay where they are, because they were still favorites even before they made this deal. It hurts to lose Harden, but I think all the pressure now goes to the Sixers.
Now, you say title contending, but we need to say that very loosely, because they're 2-8 in their last 10. They're currently 8th in the East at 31-28. And they've been playing like absolute ass with or without Harden. Ever since Durant went down, the team has just not been quite right. Didn't matter if Harden was available or not. Didn't matter if Kyrie Irving was available or not. This team's just not winning. It's not looking good. They look old. They're injured. They're just not quite. We know what they have in Durant and Kyrie, but there are still questions. All that being said, this trade, it couldn't have gone any better for either one of these teams. Like you said, the 76ers got what they want in a legitimate superstar in James Harden, regardless of whether or not he's not quite the James Harden we've come to expect over the last few years is irrelevant. He is still a star, a legit superstar in this league. And yeah, his play's fallen off a little bit, but he's still amongst the league leaders in assists per game. He's still damn near a walking bucket. He can still schwap it from anywhere. His handles is still filthy. So as long as he's healthy, Harden and Embiid are going to take this Philadelphia team far in the playoffs if they're both healthy, because the rest of that team is right. I love Harris as a 3. I love that they were able to keep Ty Booty, and they're a team that's built, and they're currently the 3 seed out in the East, and the East is tight. Miami and Chicago sitting at the top at 30-21 each. Both of these teams have been playing well lately, and Philadelphia, Cleveland, and the Milwaukee Bucks, 3, 4, and 5, are all 2.5 games back of first place. So you got 5 teams within 2.5 games of that first place slot. It's going to get crazy. It's going to get crazy out in the East. And with that, I think we're done with the trade deadline stuff. So before we move forward and get into the next topic, I do want to remind everyone that betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes, so you don't have to. Head over to their website now. Take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. Head on over to betting.net. And we do have a question from Thomas R. And Thomas R. says, if the Nets get healthy by the end of the regular season, do you think that they could contend for the Eastern Conference? Tom, I absolutely believe that they can contend. This team was made this past offseason. They were built with the intentions of making a chip. They were put together, built around Durant and Kyrie and Harden, with the expectation that if this team is healthy, they're going to make a run for the chip. I don't know how you can't make a run at the chip with that trio. Even without Harden, as long as Ben Simmons comes correct, this is New York City. It's Brooklyn, but this is New York. All right. Philadelphia fans are just as brutal as New York fans, but New York fans are amongst the most passionate, knowledgeable fans in basketball. It's the Mecca. It's New York City. It's not Madison Square Garden, but you're in the city. Let's be honest, okay? And playing in Brooklyn, playing with Durant, playing at the Barclays, that comes with a lot of pressure. So Ben Simmons folded like a folding chair really easily in Philadelphia. Couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't handle the criticism, couldn't handle it. The heat from his teammates, from his coach. Now you're playing with a team that, yeah, Philly's been playing well. Yeah, Philly's a contender, but Brooklyn was the favorite. They still might be the favorite. So him passing up a big shot late in the game might look a little better when you're passing it to Durant or passing it to Kyrie rather than passing it to Ty Booty or whoever it was that he passed that layup off to that Embiid was talking about. But this team is definitely a contender.
And I like that Thomas mentioned if they get healthy, because the key is Durant has to be healthy. They're not a contender without Durant. I don't care. Right. Kyrie could be going bonkers toward the end of the season, and Ben Simmons could be showing, all right, I'm going to average 15, 10, and 10 or something. I still wouldn't buy the Nets, especially because they probably are going to finish in that 4 to 8 range. I don't think they're going to climb all the way back up because Durant's still a few weeks away from returning, and it's getting late early. They're over the halfway point. The All-Star break usually comes where teams have already played 55 to 60 games, so there's not a whole lot of games left for them to play. I was just looking at their schedule too. It's a bit difficult coming out of the break. They play teams like the Celtics, the Heat, the Raptors, other teams that are ahead of them right now in the playoff race. Now, not a lot separates each team. They're only 7 games out of the top spot, but you can't expect that big of a jump from the Nets, especially because of what you said. They're part of their team still pretty old. But I do think getting a younger player in Simmons, once he finally steps on the court, that'll help. But yes, if they're healthy, absolutely they can contend, and they'll be dangerous. But it's all about Durant. And the only thing for them to worry about is really if these mandates don't change at all with Kyrie. I think they're a joke at this point. We've come so far along with COVID and whatnot. It's asinine. Now, it would be one thing if the mandate was like no vaccinated players could play in Barclays Center or Madison Square Garden, or obviously the other cities like San Francisco where that's also a rule. But basically, if you're on a team, on a visiting team, you can be unvaccinated and play in New York. But Kyrie's on the Nets, so he can't play because he's unvaccinated. It just doesn't make any sense. And like I said, we've come so far. The rates have, significantly dropped. Omicron has kind of fizzled out and it isn't as, damaging to people as a lot of the other variants like Delta or the original, COVID-19 wave. So we've just come along so far that I think they should. And even Adam Silver a week or so ago spoke out about how the mandates don't really make sense. And people got to remember, this isn't the NBA instituting this. This is the cities. This is the city of New York or cities of San Francisco. Putting these mandates in place where in these buildings everyone needs to be vaccinated, but somehow the visiting players it doesn't apply to. It's just asinine, basically.
So hopefully the city gets their act together with these COVID regulations and shit and catches up.
And neither of Irving fans at all, but I'm just trying to be fair objectively, honestly.
That's what we got to do. We can't always shit on our home city teams and whatnot. We have to be objective, bro. We have to be fair. Can't always hate on these clowns.
No, you might see the blue and orange, but I'm defending Kyrie here in that regard. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It's stupid. It's hypocritical, and I hate it. But let's shift gears for a hot second because that's the big ticket. Is what's going on in Brooklyn? What's going on with Philly? What's going on with that trade? one thing, actually, one question before we move on from that trade and whatever, because this was the biggest deal at the deadline, and this is still something people are talking about. The Ben Simmons effect, Bob. Is he really going to fit in Brooklyn, man? Is this really a thing? Or are they going to end up having to trade this man because he's soft as baby shit? What's going on?
Well, I think he is soft as baby shit. He got his ego hurt mainly because of what Doc Rivers said after that series ended. I think he was posed the question, like, what if he's a championship point guard or not? And he said basically, I don't know if he is or not, and that offended him. And then I've said it, I think at least once or twice before on the show. I think it's a joke that he used the mental health issue. I respect those. I think mental health is something that people need to talk about more. But now all of a sudden after the trade, he's like ramping up and planning to play. Like, it's like clearly he just wasn't happy with the Sixers and how things ended there. He got a bruised ego, and yeah, I think he will honestly fit though with the Nets because they're not going to ask him to do as much. Now, could he still fold? Yeah, I think he could. It seems like he is pretty soft mentally. But hey, with Durant and Irving, he's not going to need to score. But yeah, if he's wide open like he was for a layup late in that series against the Hawks, yeah, he needs to take it. When you're on a fast break, I mean, he's got to realize, look, that he did F up there. You can say what you want about how the words hurt you and what Doc Rivers said and what Joel Embiid said about you, but that is a play you got to make. You're an NBA player getting paid to play basketball. You need to perform and do, of course, the simplest of tasks like a layup or dunk when you're by yourself at the rim. It's just a joke. So he's got to do that. They're not going to ask him to shoot threes or take a lot of, take over on possessions or do any isolation. Just play within the way they play. Give Durant and Kyrie and Seth Curry the rock. I even like that they got Drummond in the deal. They needed a big that's not ancient like LaMarcus Aldridge or Blake Griffin, who have seen their best days past them. Now, Drummond's seen probably his days past him, but he's still only about 28. He can still get a double-double on a given night if you give him 20 minutes a game. So Ben Simmons, I think, will fit, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen right away. We know these things take some time. And one thing that I'm curious about to ask you or even our audience is, do you think he's even going to play in that game March 10th when they travel to Philadelphia?
No, I don't. They can't do that to that man. They'll boo him off the court. It'll get crazy, and these Philly fans can get very disrespectful if they really want to. I don't think they're going to play him. I don't think they should. I mean, I would love it if they did. That's what you watch these games for. That's must watch TV. You get to see Ben go back and see if he could stick it to his old team. You get to see if Harden can do something special, bring back the Harden of old that I love. But nah, they're not going to play that, man. No way.
I don't see it happening either. I mean, they're just. I think they're going to hide him and prevent him from that chaos in Philadelphia.
And before we move on, Thomas R with another comment. I think they need to bring back the timer for the dunk contest. It's got to go quicker if it's going to be that bad. Tom, you're not wrong, dude. I don't know why they got rid of the clock in the first place. And they need to limit the amount of tries that they have and shit like that, too. I don't know what's going on. And honestly, if the players aren't going to take these games serious, these things, little skills challenges and whatever serious, and a bunch of nobodies just going to show up, and Obi Toppin's going to win it, don't do it.
Well, don't crap on Obi Toppin. He's actually had some nice dunks last year and this year. But yeah, he's definitely right. They need to have a timer like they used to because we don't want to waste our time for minutes on end. Jalen Green had, over 20-plus attempts? I'll be honest, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did see part of his attempts as it was happening live. And yeah, I just had to avert my eyes because I'm just like, what? Why are they doing this? There needs to be, some kind of rule. I know some people are saying, they should only have a couple tries. I think that's a little unfair. Some of these are difficult, obviously, to try to pull off.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely a timer. If you don't get it done in, say, 2 minutes, oh, well, too bad.
Sucks to suck. That's it. And one more thing for Ben Simmons, I'm going to say this. He needs to get some sand, stop being a little twat, get out there, be useful. And I'm hoping while he was doing nothing this whole season thus far, and sitting at home or wherever he was, all right, not being useful, and working on his mental health, apparently, which suddenly is better once he got traded, like you said. Hopefully he was in the gym working on that shot and not being completely useless and crying at home, wondering when he was going to get traded. Hopefully he's useful. But with that being said, before we move on, where is it here? And I lost my place. There we go. Boom. Not just sports betting. Betting.net compares the best online casinos. So sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games over at betting.net. Bob, I'm looking at these standings, and a couple of things stand out to me. One, Cleveland is still very much in the mix and looking real legit. Two, the New York Knicks suck. They're completely irrelevant. Like the Nets, they're 2-8 in their last 8 games. And they sit at 25-34, which is good for 12th in the East, a couple games back, 2.5 games back of Washington for that 11 seed. And it's gross. I think I've asked you this once every 2 or 3 weeks for the last couple of months, but I'm going to ask you again. How do you feel about the Cleveland Cavaliers, Bob? Are they legit, or do you still think this is a flash in the pan and they're not quite right?
They're legit. I mean, they're clearly playoff contenders, and that's definitely changed. I didn't think they were when we were talking in December, for example. I thought they'd probably fizzle out. I thought the Wizards would too. So I guess
the Wizards did.
Batted 500 on that, I guess. 50-50. So, but hey, the Cavaliers look legit, and I definitely like the reinforcement that they brought in at the trade deadline, getting Karis LeVert. He deals with a ton of injuries himself as well. But considering Ricky Rubio is done for the year, they trade him in that deal, actually. And so they're able to get Karis LeVert, who can score 20 on any given night. Pair him with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and that's a very young, dangerous team in the playoffs. I still will say I don't buy them as a serious title contender, especially once you get to the playoffs. It's that much harder, and if teams are healthy, they're going to be playing their guys damn near 40 minutes a game. And, the Bucks with Giannis and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, and the Heat with Lowry and Adebayo and Butler. Even teams like the Celtics, who are maybe not one of those top 3 teams, but they're dangerous with Tatum and Brown. It's going to be very difficult for the Cavaliers to rattle off 3 series wins in the East. But could they upset someone? Yeah. Just so long they don't play, say, the Bucks right now. That's who they would play in the first round, and I definitely would favor the Bucks there.
Now, you mentioned a couple of teams, but the Heat are a team I want to talk about real quick because you disrespected them last year. You disrespected them going into this year. At least I thought you did, because we've had these conversations.
Somehow these narratives stay every year when they, that's not the case, but okay.
Listen, we can look at the tape, but I don't remember you saying many fond things about the Miami Heat coming into this year. Now, I would say I didn't think they would be the number 1 seed at the All-Star break, 6-10 in their last games, 38-21 overall, tied with Chicago for the top seed. I didn't think that was a possibility, but damn, they're playing well, man. And their schedule is really light. They play a lot of home games after the All-Star break, and they play against New York, which they're New York's daddy. They've won 8 of their last 9 games against the Knicks. So that's, if you want to place some bets and start there, start with that one. Pick the Heat. I don't care what the line is. I'm picking the Heat on that one. But the Heat are also the only Eastern Conference team that are top 10 on both sides of the court. Are the Heat a legitimate, not only Eastern Conference contender, but are they a legitimate title contender?
I do think they are, but I still would put the Bucks over them and probably the Nets, assuming the Nets are fully healthy.
Assuming.
So people can say what they want. I didn't think, in the bubble they were going to make the finals, but pretty much no one did. And they lost to the Lakers. And then I pulled up our sports discussion. For the 2020 to 2021 year last year, I predicted them to be 5th. And when we would talk about them, I was like, I don't buy them as title contenders. Did they even make the Eastern Conference Finals? No, they bowed out in, I think, the first round. This year, I actually picked them 5th again. You had them 3rd. So, all right, you gave them a little more respect coming into this year, and you probably will be more right as far as where they finish. Still a lot to be played, though. And those teams are all bunched up together, so who knows how that'll fall. But I don't have them in the finals. You didn't have them in the finals. So, no, I don't think they're going to be a top-tier contender. But could they make a run? Yeah, absolutely. I think they'll definitely win their first-round series, for example. But I don't know. Maybe if they play the Nets, I'm not so sure about that. But otherwise, if they play a team like the Cavs or hell, even the Sixers. I mean, I do think James Harden should help with the Sixers, but I'm not sold on that team as it's currently constructed. And I need to see Embiid get through a full season. So far, so good. He's only missed a handful of games, and he's a serious MVP candidate. But going back to the Heat, yes, when they have Lowry, Adebayo, and Butler out there, Tyler Hero as well off the bench, yeah, they're a dangerous team. They have a great coach in Eric Spoelstra. They are a title contender, but there's still probably 4 teams I would choose over them overall in the NBA. I'm not saying just the East.
Damn. All right. Fair enough. Let's talk about the Knicks, Bob. I know no one cares about them outside of New York, and no one
to the end of the show, right?
Yeah,
better now.
Yeah, no one cares about them but us and Knicks fans. No one cares about them outside of New York, and I get it. No one should. 25-34, 12th in the East, 2-8 in their last 10, 3-game losing streak going into the break. Literally nothing good. Can't win at home, have a losing record at home, losing record on the road. It's just all bad. All bad. Made no moves at the deadline.
No, we traded for Cam Reddish like a couple weeks before.
Made no moves of note at all. Is it over for Tibbs, Bob? Is it over for Tibbs? Is it over for this little experiment with the front office? Is it over for these guys or what?
I don't think it is. I think they'll get another season, but I definitely think it's a joke that anybody can put all the blame on Tibbs. Is he absolved of guilt? No. They should not be blowing 20-point leads. That falls on the players and the coach. That's been a big problem over the last few weeks, them blowing 20-point leads over teams like the Lakers and I think even the Thunder. The Blazers was a bad one. The Thunder, I don't think they were up that big, but they lost to a very young and experienced Thunder team that they had no business losing to, especially at the Garden. And really, they've struggled at the Garden more than they have on the road, which is really inexcusable. And so, yeah, Tibbs deserves some blame. Don't get me wrong, but I still know Tibbs is one of the better coaches in the league. Maybe that's an indictment on the rest of the league. But the way this team was constructed was not in a way that is his coaching style. We clearly know Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier have not worked out. That's not all Tibbs' fault. None of us liked Evan Fournier getting that kind of contract. And hey, I said I was fine with the Kemba thing. I didn't say I loved it, but it's a low risk. He's only getting paid $8 or $9 million for these 2 seasons. So yeah, didn't work out. Of course, we know that now. But it wasn't a huge commitment. But a guy like Fournier on top of it, 2 players who can't play defense, are very streaky shooters. Kemba clearly has seen his best days passing by a few years ago. Those moves didn't work out. Bringing in Cam Reddish, it seems like he's not Tibbs' type of guy. So Tibbs really needs to work on trying to get these guys involved. But no, I'm not ready to can Tom Thibodeau after 2 seasons? No, I'm not. I think more of the onus has to go in the front office. I'm also not trying to necessarily clear them out yet, but it also depends on who's available. Yeah, if some great coach or great GM comes available, yeah, I'll change my mind. But as of right now, I don't really see where there's anybody else out there, especially a coach that I can think of that I'd really want. I'd like Kenny Atkinson. If you're telling me maybe they'd fire Tibbs at the end of the year and that's someone that they'd hire, okay, I could go for that. But otherwise, I don't know what other option you can present me.
Sports is crazy, man. Sports is really out of control because Tibbs is just one coach of the year. And here we are, not even 1 year later. And we're asking the questions of, should they fire this man? Is it time to move on? Is it over for this experiment? It's been something that's been talked about a lot on the radio waves, on TV and stuff like that here in New York. But I'm with you. As boring as that is, I'm not buying it. Is it ugly? It is hideous. The Knicks are 29th in pace. They're 25th in offense, 17th in defense. They're just bad all around. They've lost 13 of their last 16. There's nothing good. Their 3-point shooting percentage is lower. Their everything is just worse. Their defense is worse. They're one of the worst defenses in the league, if not the worst, in crunch time, and it's ugly. Everything that Tibbs is supposed to be, he hasn't been. This team hasn't been. And yeah, you're right. It's not all on the coach, but they got to be better. And this team's given up on this man. They've given up on the season. They've given up on this man. If they don't pick it up in the second half, they're not going to make the playoffs. Even if they did, they're irrelevant. The best thing they can hope for is the play-in.
If they quit on him, I could definitely see where, you'd say, all right, you need to make a change.
I already think they've quit on him. How are you going to be up by 20 points and lose to a team that doesn't even have their top, 2 or 3 players?
That still shows you like they come out like firing and that they're firing on all cylinders and they let off the gas. I don't think it's just Thibodeau.
The Knicks had 4 fourth quarter leads of at least 6 points. And they didn't win those games.
And they would get blown out from the jump if they really were totally giving up on it. It's just that would be my counterpoint,
I guess. But even, everything's gotten worse. Julius Randle's gotten worse. Everything's gotten worse. And I don't want to believe that, Derrick Rose being healthy would change that, because that's scary. If a 33, 34-year-old point guard with no knees is okay, I don't want to say no knees, but with an extensive injury history, is going to be suddenly the spark plug that makes this team relevant again. I'm not buying that. I'm not believing that at all. But let's move on from the Knicks, the bottom of the league, the Butts. And we've talked about the East a lot. I do want to talk about the West. And I want to talk about, instead of teams that didn't make moves, a team that did make moves, a team that did not make any moves. And we talk about them a lot, the LA Lakers. All right, here we go again. Another thing we've been talking about for weeks, another thing that hasn't changed. Pelinka says they're going forward with what they got. Vogel says they trust the team that they have, that they'll figure it out and get it together. LeBron is doing LeBron things. AD is hurt again. It's real threatening out there in Lakerland, Bob. But they didn't make any moves at the deadline. Is it because they don't have anything to give? Nobody wants Horton Tucker anymore. No one definitely wants Russell Westbrook. And they had apparently a trade on, potentially a trade that they were discussing or that was on the table. I don't know what it was, but a John Wall for Russell Westbrook deal that I don't know if it was Washington that didn't want, Houston that didn't want to do it, or if it was the Lakers that didn't want to do it, or if LeBron wanted it in the front. I don't know what the deal was, but I know that was a big rumor. It didn't happen. Nothing happened.
Trading for John Wall, it would have just been trading one problem for another, and that could be wrong, but I feel like he has an extra year on his deal more than Westbrook. So to me, I'm just trying to take the lesser contract. And John Wall hasn't played all year. Now, granted, he's probably stayed in shape and he wants to be out there, but they didn't guarantee that he'd be starting or playing a lot of minutes. So that's why he has sat out. So I'd still rather have Russell Westbrook. It's ugly either way. I don't think even if they make that trade, right away he's going to play. No, he needs to ramp up his activities. And who knows, maybe he could play better than Westbrook. Westbrook has been pretty awful this year. I know people still point to, he's averaging these numbers and those figures, but obviously he's shooting terribly, just laying bricks, making bad decisions at late in games like he's known for. So I think the Lakers should have tried to shake something up. But yeah, I think the market dwindled and there wasn't any very attractive offer out there that would have remade the roster. So they're not a serious title contender at this point, especially when AD's hurt. Again, getting another injury that's going to sideline him for about 4 weeks. So I still think they make the playoffs. But they're going to be in that play-in, and they just got to hope LeBron stays healthy and can carry them. That's all they can really hope for.
Now let's jump away from the Lakers. They're sitting at 9th out west, 27-31, 3-7 in their last 10. Let's go to the top, Bob. And the Phoenix Suns are currently 6.5 games out in first place at 48-10. They're 9-1 in their last 10. But they just suffered a potentially catastrophic loss with Chris Paul injuring his finger, breaking his thumb, and he breaks his thumb, out for 4 to 8 weeks, or 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it is.
Right.
And he's probably going to miss the rest of the regular season minimum. And that's messed up, man. They won 18 of their last 19. Chris Paul's been going off. They're top 3 in both offense and defense and efficiency. Far and beyond the best team in basketball right now. But losing Chris Paul is a huge hit, man. Are they going to be able to survive this?
Absolutely, because they built a cushion. So I don't really worry about Phoenix Suns at all. You look at them in the standings, 48-10, like you mentioned, they got a 6.5 game lead. It's still going to be hard for teams to catch up to that. And they still have Booker, and they still have Ayton, Bridges. They have a good roster. So I think, yeah, of course it hurts. They're going to maybe lose games, especially against teams that are of their caliber, but I still expect them to beat up on the dregs of the league. Cameron Payne was really good last year and this year when he's been healthy, as like that 6th or 7th man, especially that backup point guard to him. So he'll be asked to do more. Aaron Holiday, those types of players. Hell, even Elfrid Payton, who Knicks fans remember from last year. So I don't really worry about the Suns. They're still a great team, and like I said, that cushion is another reason why I feel comfortable about that. But they've already clinched even a play-in spot by the time the All-Star break hit. So I don't worry about them. But yes, they definitely need Paul back for the playoffs if they're going to win a title.
Now, I don't think they're in trouble for the regular season, and a big part of that is their schedule, how weak it is. Of their next 24 games, literally half of them are below 500, and 4 of the next 5 are just awful, including Portland, the Pelicans, Oklahoma City. Okay, it's ugly. They sprinkle in Utah in there, but Utah's one of the better teams, but still. Their schedule is really light. My biggest concern is, like you said, is he going to be back for the playoffs and be back, and is he going to be what he's been for them thus far? If he's not, don't let Golden State do it again, man. Don't let Golden State do it. The Splash Brothers are healthy. They're right. Draymond Green is coming back in a few weeks, probably in a month or so. Don't let them do it, man. Don't discuss the league.
Yeah, I mean, home court advantage isn't as important as it used to be. So even if somehow they wound up giving up that number 1 seed, I think they'll be all right. But again, 6.5 game lead is pretty nice, and so long as Booker doesn't go down, they'll be fine.
Are you buying the Memphis Grizzlies? They have They had the number 1 offense in February in the league. They have the number 1 fast break offense, number 1 points per game in the paint, number 1 in second chance points, top 10 defensively, sitting at 3rd in the West, 41-19, 8-2 in their last 10. Are you buying this Memphis Grizzlies team as a legit contender out west?
That's always the caveat, and I would say no, because I still think, kind of like with the Heat, I still think teams like the Bucks or the Nets, if they're fully healthy, more dangerous. And then the West, the Suns and Warriors. But I like the Grizzlies more than, say, I like the Cleveland Cavaliers, for instance, because I know the Grizzlies have that premier superstar in Ja Morant, whereas Darius Garland and Mobley and Allen and LeVert, really good players, but I don't think they have that one guy who could just take over a game at any given moment, quite like Ja Morant's shown this year.
Who do you think is more likely to make their respective conference final? Cleveland or Memphis?
Memphis, because I actually also think the West is a little weaker. It's you still have some dangerous teams down there, like the Nuggets that are sitting around like the 6th spot, I believe.
6th spot, yep.
But yeah, I think the East has clearly caught up. in the last couple of years, and there's still a lot of really good West teams. But I like to say I think the bottom is more dangerous in the East, especially with the Nets kind of hovering around that spot, or even a team like the Hornets, who you might not want to see in a playoff series. So I think the Grizzlies have a much better chance than the Cavs.
Dude, and you know, as much as I hate them for my own personal, just completely biased fantasy basketball reasons, the Denver Nuggets are right, man. And they've won 3 straight games going into the break. They are 6-4 in their last 10, but they've been looking good lately. And they are a team to watch in the second half. Joker is still maybe the best big man in the game. So, and don't sleep on them. And especially if they get Murray back and Porter Jr.
They could be, but I still don't. I still Suns, Warriors. It's one of those teams.
All right. I think that pretty much covers all the topics. Let's see. We got Thomas. One more thing. And Thomas R., I got to go. Really enjoy listening to you guys. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you very much, Thomas R. Thank you for tuning in. Love that cult symbol. Make sure you tune into we do a weekly football shows, NFL Pick'em show, myself, Mike Goodpaster, and Steve Risley every Wednesday right here on The Grueling Truth. So make sure you tune into that. Steve Risley is a huge Colts fan. I think he picked the Indianapolis Colts every single week in our Pick'em show. For good or for better or for worse, he did it, I'm pretty sure. So if you like our basketball, thank you for tuning in. We'll be on here hopefully every Tuesday. And, watch our football show tomorrow. But yeah, Bob, do you have any other topics you want to cover tonight?
No, I believe that's all. I'm good. It was a good show.
Yes, a lot of good stuff. Thank you guys who've been watching so far. Thank you for tuning in. I want you guys to give us a follow, give us a like, share. We are on Instagram. We are on Twitter. The handle is at DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. Bob runs the IG. I run the Twitter. Either way, you follow us, we'll follow you back. Drop us a DM if you want us to talk about anything specific, if you have any questions, concerns, ideas, etc. We'll be back next week. For Bobby Hunt, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you for tuning in. This was Shoot the J. Shoot it! We'll see you guys next week.